The Oakland County child killer case has to be one of the most disturbing cold cases out there right now. And the fact that it still even is a cold case makes it even that more terrifying. And in today's episode of The Twitch, we're going to be looking at the facts, evidence, and trying to find some sort of ending for this 43-year-old case. In case you aren't familiar with the Oakland County child killer or the case in general, let me give you a little bit of backstory. Between February 15th, 1976 and March 16th, 1977, 2 boys and 2 girls aged between 10 and 12 went missing outside of their homes en route to or from another location in Oakland County, Michigan. Each child's body was discovered within 19 days after their disappearance, and they were either shot or strangled. And the 2 boys that were found were sexually abused. Just those 4 deaths triggered one of the biggest investigations the U.S. had ever seen, with a bunch of newspapers and radio stations covering the case as people were terrified about this thing that had happened. A presentation on WXYT radio even won the Peabody Award in 1977. So now that we have the light story, let's go into the victims. Now, these are the confirmed victims. There's suspected victims. There's victims that were then removed from the case because they turned out not to be victims of this particular crime. But right now, we're just going to be covering the confirmed ones, and then we'll go into suspected and others. First, we have Mark Stebbins, who was 12. He did not return home the night of February 15th, 1976. He was found 4 days later in the parking lot of an office building with lacerations around his wrist, his neck, bruises along his head, and rope marks, indicating that he had been bound during his captivity. The next victim is Jill Robinson, who was also 12. She walked out of her home on December 22nd, 1976, following an argument with her mother. The next day, her bicycle was found near a hobby store, and then on the morning of December 26th, she was found along Interstate 75 within throwing distance of a police station. She had been shot in the face with a 12-gauge shotgun, and again, she was wearing the same clothes and even donning her Bery backpack that she had left with on December 22nd. Next victim is Christine Milish. I'm pretty sure it's Milish, and she was age 10. She was reported missing on January 2nd, 1977, after she failed to return home from a gas station. 90 days later, a mail carrier found her body within throwing distance of a neighborhood, and she had been strangled to death 24 hours before. Again, she was in throwing distance and could be seen from these very prominent places. This is a kind of big deal with this case that was also very weird and also something that just kept showing up. And the last confirmed victim was Timothy King, who was 11. On the night of March 16th, 1977, he left his home to go to a drugstore. A mass search was conducted, but he was not found until March 22nd, when 2 teenagers found his lifeless body in a ditch, and he had been sexually assaulted and had been suffocated approximately 6 hours earlier. These are the suspected victims, so there's no direct tie to these cases, but they were in the same area and had similar effects on the family and had similar deaths. Cynthia Cadiux, who was 16, was found bludgeoned to death on January 16th, 1976. And then Jane Allen, who was 14, was found dead near a river on August 11th. She had died from carbon monoxide poisoning. So there's no direct tie to these cases, but because they happen in the same time frame and with a similar age group and similar deaths, people are not sure if these are directly tied to the other case. And there are a few disapproved ones. Because they're disapproved, I'm not going to cover them. But there is one possible victim. Kimberly Alice King, who was age 12. Disappeared on September 15, 1979. Authorities believe that she was abducted and that her disappearance was somehow linked to these killings. So now into the actual search effort and the investigation. This is where things start to go interesting. People start to figure out that the killings are connected. So after discovering Christine's body, the authorities realized that she was connected to Mark Stevens and Joe Robinson because their deaths were very similar to hers. They started to realize that this was the same person that murdered them and that there was a mass killing going on. A warning was released to the public that there was a serial killer on the loose, and everyone went absolutely insane. Michigan State Police led a group of law enforcement officials from 13 communities into one task force in order to find one man or woman, but it was suspected to be a man. After Timothy King disappeared, a woman came out saying that she saw a boy with a skateboard that looked very much like Timothy talking to a man in the same parking lot of the drugstore that he disappeared in. Soon they came out with a sketch of this supposed killer, and everyone was trying to find who he was and what he was doing in their town and trying to see if they even knew him. Supposedly he was a white male aged between 25 and 35 with a dark complexion, shaggy hair, and sideburns, who had a job that gave him freedom of movement and made him appear trustworthy to children, was familiar with the area and could keep children captive for long periods of time without rousing neighbors' suspicions. The task force looked over at least 18,000 different tips from concerned citizens and had over 24 arrests that were not related to the case because of these tips. They also discovered a multi-state child pornography ring operating in North Fox Island in Lake Michigan. But they weren't able to make much headway on the case, and the evidence had to be handed over to the state. Next, we get into the suspects. These are the people who we think might have done it, but we're not sure. And of course, this is always the part where we try to find who actually did it from the suspects that they pulled out. So let's hope that we can find some sort of closure. Okay, so this next part that I'm going to read, this paragraph, is a word for word because there's just so much information, it's hard to relay. I'm going to put a link to all the websites that I used in the description so you guys can go check those out. So the paragraph that I'm about to read is not my own. It's something from a website, but there's just so much information that it's hard to tweak into something that's my own. A few weeks after the death of Timothy King, a psychiatrist who worked with the task force received a letter riddled with spelling errors written by an anonymous author, Allen, claiming to be a misogynist slave of Frank, the Oakland County child killer. Allen wrote that they had both served in the Vietnam War and that Frank was traumatized by having killed children and had taken revenge on more affluent citizens, such as the residents of Birmingham, wanting rich people to suffer for sending forces to Vietnam. Allen expressed fear and remorse in his letter, saying that he was losing his sanity, and admitted to having accompanied Frank as the latter sought boys to kill. Allen instructed the psychiatrist to respond by printing the code words, "Weather Bureau says trees to bloom in 3 weeks," in that Sunday's Free Press edition, before offering to provide photographic evidence in exchange for immunity from prosecution. The psychiatrist arranged to meet Allen at a bar, but Allen did not show up and was never heard from again. Archibald Edward Sloan, who was a child molester who targeted kids in his neighborhood, became a very top suspect for this case. The reason is because his hair samples were found in his car from 1966, matched hair that was found on the bodies of Timothy and Mark. But the hair wasn't from Sloan himself. Another witness said to see Timothy being abducted by 2 men, not one. One of them was described as being in their late 20s, while the other one had a strong resemblance to John Wayne Gacy, who was supposedly in Michigan at the time of the killings. But Gacy's DNA did not match the DNA on the bodies. Police in Ohio arrested Tom Lamborghini because he was a retired auto worker who was supposedly in a child porn ring in 1970s. March 27th, 2007, reporters told television sources that he was the top suspect in the case. Lamborghini pleaded guilty to 15 different reports of sexual assault with young boys, rather than accept a plea bargain that would have to require him to take a polygraph test regarding the Oakland County killings. Lamborghini also rejected an offer of a reduced sentence if he did a polygraph about the killings. Both ways, he said he did not want to do the polygraph. This is a giant piece of evidence in our theory, so just hold on to that. Now, this is where it gets interesting, and I quote, "In October 2007, the family of Mark Stebbins filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Lamborghini seeking $25,000. Then, it states that the lawsuit alleges Lamborghini, who lived in Metro Detroit in the late 1970s, abducted Mark and held him captive in a Royal Oak house for 4 days in February 1976, before smothering him to death during a sexual assault." Okay? Lamborghini has never been formally linked nor charged in the death of Mark Stebbins. End quote. So, this family believed that he did it. And, well, I think he did it too. Before we get into that, let me read one last paragraph, and then we can get into the theory. Now, this is also very interesting. And I quote, "The case sparked new interest when Timmy King's father, Bery, and brother Chris tried to get the Michigan State Police to release information about Chris Bush, the son of Harold Lee Bush, a high-level General Motors executive." Remember, Lamborghini was an auto worker. Chris Bush had been in police custody shortly before Timmy's abduction for suspected involvement of child pornography. He allegedly committed suicide in November 1978. There was no gunshot residue found on him, though, and no blood spatter whatsoever. Furthermore, there were 4 shell casings found in his room. He was also found wrapped neatly under his sheets. There was 1 bullet hole between his eyes, no blood. There was also a hand-drawn image of a boy closely resembling Mark Stebbins screaming in agony, which was found pinned to the wall in which Bush allegedly committed suicide. There's been no confirmed activity by the Oakland County child killer for nearly 20 months prior to Bush's death. Okay, so all of this to conclude to my theory, okay? And this is a big theory, so you guys are just going to kind of have to strap in. I think that the police in Parma Heights, Ohio had it right. I think Ted Lamborghini did it. I think he was 100% guilty. So let's look at the evidence to support this theory. First of all, he was, 1, in the town in which these killings happened. 2, he was suspected in a child pornography ring. And 3, he had assaulted children before. He refused 2 times to take a polygraph about these killings, okay? Because he was lying, is at least what I'm thinking. If you could get a reduced sentence, would you do it? I'm sure your answer is yes, because you want to go back to your family, you wouldn't want to be in prison, period. But he didn't take that. He refused to take a polygraph for a reduced sentence. Now, it's not specified how long this sentence was, it was going to be, like how long the reduced sentence was going to be, but he refused that. And also, he didn't even accept a plea bargain because that would also mean that he would have to take the polygraph. So both times that would have helped him, he didn't take it because he was guilty. If he took the polygraph, it would have shown that he was guilty. That's the entire point. Now, Chris Bush, who was in custody for child pornography, was the son of Henry Bush, who was the head of the motor company that Lamborghini worked for. So I'm assuming they were all part of it and they all had to keep their mouth shut because they were all suspected in this ring and they were all linked via this business. And remember that they found Chris dead in his home and there was a picture heavily resembling Mark Stebbins in his room screaming in agony. So maybe he didn't keep his mouth shut, maybe he told someone, and then they had to take care of him by killing him. Because they're not sure if it's supposedly a suicide. They're not sure if it was a suicide. So what if he didn't keep his mouth shut? What if he told someone, or what if he threatened to tell someone because they were threatening him, and he got killed, either by a third party, like the 20-year-old man that was with the suspected John Wayne lookalike, after abducting Timothy, when they were abducting Timothy, remember there was a 20-year-old man and a guy that looked like John Wayne, right? So what if the 20-year-old guy was the guy that killed him, because clearly he was a part of this, but it wasn't specified who he was. So what I believe is that someone killed Chris, who was the son of the guy that worked for which was the son of the guy that owned the auto company that Lamborghini worked for. And I believe that Lamborghini committed all these crimes with the help of this auto company. Now, why they did it, I have no idea. Meaning, of course, they're terrible people. They like to do terrible things to children, so that's their motive. They just like to do things to children. Now, about this whole letter with this Alan character and this Frank character, I'm not sure where all that fits in. Now, what I'm assuming is that either this is someone just trying to get into the news by writing some sort of fake letter, or that there's an entire other level to this case that is still yet to be revealed. Now, I'm not sure where this fits in, or if it even does fit in. Like I said, could just be someone trying to write something that's fake on the case to try to get attention in the news. But, I don't know. But that's my theory. Now, it's a kind of weak theory, but I do believe that him refusing to take the polygraph twice is strong evidence against him, and also the fact that the son of his boss was dead in his home. Picture of a boy that heavily resembled the boy that he killed. Like, all that evidence just ties together perfectly. Now, could I be wrong? 100%. But this is the best theory I could come up with, and it's a theory that I'm going to stick to until there is more evidence. So, thank you guys for watching. If you have any more theories, drop them in the comment section below. If you have any ideas or you found new evidence around the case, also comment it below. Make sure to go follow me on Instagram, where you can DM me cases that you want me to cover, and you could have the next idea for the next Twitch episode. So make sure to go follow me on Instagram and like and subscribe, because we are trying to reach 100 subscribers by the end of the year. So thank you guys for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode. Usually I would end it off with a pun, but this case is very serious and it deals with a very heavy topic, so I'm not going to end it up with a pun because there's nothing in this story that is funny in any sense of the word. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. Stay safe out there, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.